Hello, Wayne Norcliffe here, Fellow of the RICS and the Association of Building Engineers. In this short video, we're going to consider how to negotiate with a vendor following your survey. There's lots of information in your survey you can use for negotiations, and in this course, I'll help explain how. Okay, so let's get to the course. Firstly, don't think you can't renegotiate your property. Ignore terms such as gesundering, gesumping and all those emotive words. It's perfectly reasonable to renegotiate your purchase price once you've had the survey. The offer you made was subject to contract and subject to survey by default. You've now had a survey that gives you information, you've found out things that you didn't know about, therefore it's perfectly reasonable to approach the vendor to address those concerns and hopefully get a reduction in your original offer price. A good way to start is to remind the vendor that you are still willing to buy the property, and should you not buy it, the next purchaser is probably going to have the same concerns you've got, and they're probably going to want to renegotiate the price just the same as you are now. If you remind them of this, it can help them remember that should you not buy it, the property has to be remarketed, and that could take some time, and there's no guarantee that they'll get the money that you're offering them. So they may as well negotiate with you. Remind them that you're just trying to be reasonable. You put an offer price in, didn't know the defects that the survey has now found, so you need to have a chat with them and work out how you can ensure that you can afford to move into the property. That's a good tactic, and clients of mine have used this tactic many times to save tens of thousands of pounds. Let's move to the next section. Perfect planning prevents poor performance. That's the old adage. Negotiating a sale price is no different. Preparation is everything. So firstly, go through your survey report. In that report, and maybe also your legal documentation by the way, there will be information that you can use to negotiate the sale price. You offered a price subject to contract and subject to survey. It's perfectly reasonable to renegotiate your offer price now you've got more information. Some tactics estate agents may use will be to say, oh, that's factored into the price, or that was obvious when you walked around. Well, in that case then, you can say to them, why didn't you tell me about it? If it was factored into the price, then you would have expected them to tell you about these defects, wouldn't you? But working on that basis, let's assume that they didn't know about it. You're highlighting them a defect now, one that's in your survey report, one that you didn't know about because nobody told you until your surveyor. Therefore, you need to renegotiate the price. So go through the report, pull out things that could be costly or concern you or simply want to use for negotiation. That can be anything. In addition to the things you want to use for negotiation, think about the things you can sacrifice. So for instance, it's always good to give and take in a negotiation. So for instance, you may have walked around and seen that the windows were defective. Well, it would probably be unfair and unwise to try and use that as a negotiation point when it was obvious when you walked around. Maybe you're willing to sacrifice that as an example. There may be other things you could sacrifice. Try and find things that you know are not going to cost you much to repair and that you expected. When sacrificing things, try to give the positive side of what you're doing. I'm willing to sacrifice this element, however, I didn't expect X, Y or Z. When you're using things, try and find things that the agent or vendor didn't know. So defects such as dampness or problems in the roof space or problems with the roof, things that they didn't know about, well, how could they have factored that into the price if they didn't know about it? If they did know about it, why didn't they tell you about it before you put your offer price in or before the surveyor went round and did a survey? So you can counter their arguments that way. Once you've found the things that you want to negotiate, get quotations unless you're aware of the price yourself. Get quotations from relevant builders and contractors so you're armed with the information. You've got an independent survey report, you've got independent builders quotes, you now know what it's going to cost you to fix it, and don't forget, add something on for your inconvenience. Remember, you're the one who's going to have to manage the builders. You're the one who's going to have to put up with the noise and disturbance while they're on site. Repairs that haven't been carried out by the vendor are repairs that you're picking up on their behalf. If you look at it that way, you're taking a liability for the things that they didn't do. They could have done it, they chose not to do it, and they transferred that liability to you. You should now get yourself a reduction in price at least to reflect the cost of works. But as I say, add a little bit on for inconvenience as well. And don't forget, when builders quote, they often increase that later as they get there and find their other defects. So it's always worthwhile remembering the quote from a builder is the low point. It could increase somewhat from that. Factor that in. Hope that helps. Price, and now you need the ammunition. If your surveyor hasn't provided the cost of works, surveyors will provide it at an additional fee. Then you should obtain quotations from 3 builders so you know how much it's going to cost you to undertake the works which has been identified in your independent survey report. Don't forget though, you'll need to add on a contingency to those works because builders often find other defects when they're undertaking works, delays occur because of weather, and there's also the fact that you're going to have to suffer the inconvenience of doing the works whilst you're in the property. For that reason, take the cost of works as a baseline and add a contingency on top to cover the inconvenience and potential risks of undertaking the works. You can use this then as a point to negotiate with the vendor and show that any other buyer will do the same, i.e. have a survey, find works, need to negotiate the purchase price based upon those works. It's a reasonable thing to do and not uncommon in the marketplace. So let's move to the next section. It's likely during the negotiation phase that the estate agents will say that defect was factored in to the sale price. That's a perfectly reasonable thing for the estate agent to say, I would suggest, if that defect is clearly visible to a layperson as they walk around the property. So for instance, if you walk around and you can see that the windows are suffering from age and decay, then it's probably fair to say that that was reflected in the price. However, defects like dampness or problems in the roof space, things that the vendor or estate agent wouldn't have known about, well, how could they be reflected in the roofs in the sale price and in the price that you offered? They can't be, because they weren't known. If they were known, then surely they should have told you about it. You would have reflected it in your offer price before having the survey. So what do I mean by sacrificial lambs? This is what I mean by sacrificial lambs. Go through your survey report and try to think of things that you can say that you would have known about and were factored into your offer price. So for instance, windows is a good one. Maybe they were defective and you knew they were, or the agent or vendor told you they were. It would be unfair to try and use that as a negotiation point and would probably destroy trust if you did. So they could be a sacrificial lamb, something that you don't really care too much about or that you were aware of. By giving something like that, you can ask for a requisite. So for instance, I'm willing to sacrifice the windows and not asking to negotiate the windows, say. However, I do need to talk about the roof structure because works of repair are required to the roof structure, and you didn't know about it, Mr. Vendor, Mr. Estate Agent, because if you did, you would have told me, wouldn't you? That could be a good tactic and can show you're trying to be reasonable. Throughout negotiations, try to be reasonable, try to keep a friendly atmosphere. It doesn't need to be antagonistic, it doesn't need to be something that causes problems in negotiation. It's perfectly reasonable and normal to renegotiate the purchase price once you know defects with the property. Hope this helps. Let's move to the next section. So, in conclusion, renegotiating an offer price after you have a survey is perfectly reasonable and something you should consider doing if you're concerned that your offer price did not reflect the condition of the property accurately enough. Remember, you're just doing what any other buyer would do in a similar situation. So remind the estate agent of that. You're still willing to buy the property, however, now you know some things you didn't know, perhaps because they didn't tell you. You want to renegotiate the asking price. All offers should be made without prejudice and subject to contract, and you should ensure that you follow up phone calls in writing so that you have a record of them on file. Hope this short summary of how to renegotiate following your survey helps. Visit www.castle-surveyors.co.uk for more information and lots of guidance and videos. If you wish to book a survey, we'd be happy to help. Good luck in your property purchase.